Hey there, I'm Maz, and welcome to Maz Show. This is your space to explore big ideas through books, society, knowledge, and history, all with one goal to build a better world and a brighter future. If you are curious, reflective, and ready to grow, you're in the right place. So tap follow, hit subscribe, and let's get thinking.
You know that feeling when you buy something expensive and immediately regret it? Or when you're too scared to spend money on things that could actually make your life better? Today, we're diving into the fascinating psychology of spending money, how it shapes our happiness, our relationships, and our sense of self.
And you know what's interesting? Most people think there's some kind of scientific formula for spending money correctly, but that's actually a huge misconception.
Wait, what do you mean? Isn't there, a right way to spend money?
Well, according to Morgan Housel's new book, spending money is more of an art than a science. There's no one-size-fits-all rule that works for everyone.
That's actually kind of liberating to hear.
Right? And here's what's fascinating. The way we spend money is deeply personal, often contradictory, and really different from person to person.
Can you give us an example of that?
Yeah, let me share this incredible story from the book about Jack Welch, the former CEO of General Electric. He had a near-death experience with a heart attack, and you know what his biggest regret was?
What was it?
He regretted not spending enough money on wine. He'd always bought cheap wine because of his modest background, and he swore that if he survived, he'd never buy a bottle under $100 again.
That's not what I expected from a CEO's deathbed regret.
Exactly. And it perfectly illustrates how our background shapes our relationship with money. Housel points out that our spending habits often reflect psychological wounds from our past experiences.
So our childhood experiences with money, they stick with us?
Absolutely. The book explains how someone who grew up feeling snubbed by poverty might see a fancy car as a symbol of overcoming adversity.
While someone from old money might see the same car as
a sign of insecurity, yeah. It's all about perspective and personal history.
You know what this reminds me of? All those social media influencers showing off their luxury purchases.
Oh, that's a perfect example. Housel actually talks about how we often confuse admiration with envy in our spending decisions.
What's the difference?
Well, we might think we want something because we admire it, but often we're just envious of the attention or status it brings to others.
That hits close to home.
And here's where it gets really interesting. Housel argues that spending money can absolutely buy happiness, but often in indirect ways.
What do you mean by indirect?
Well, take a big house, for example. It might make you happier, but not because of the house itself, it's because it makes it easier to spend time with friends and family.
So it's not the thing itself, but what it enables?
Exactly. And this is crucial. Sometimes the most valuable thing money can buy isn't a thing at all.
What do you mean?
Unspent money buys something intangible but incredibly valuable. Freedom, independence, and control over your time.
That's actually profound.
Right? Every dollar saved is essentially a claim check on your future freedom.
But there's also a danger there, isn't there? Of saving too much?
Yes. Housel points out that some wealthy people actually struggle to spend money on things that would make them happy because being a saver becomes such a core part of their identity.
So it's about finding the right balance?
Exactly. And what's fascinating is how this balance is different for everyone. What works for you might seem crazy to me, and vice versa.
Let's talk about something that I think a lot of our listeners struggle with, the pressure to keep up with others.
What Housel calls social debt, the pressure to spend according to societal standards rather than our own values.
Social debt, I like that term.
And it's becoming an even bigger issue with social media, where we're constantly exposed to other people's spending habits.
How do we resist that pressure?
Well, one key insight from the book is understanding that sometimes people's desire to show off fancy stuff is their only way to gain respect and admiration.
That's actually kind of sad when you think about it.
It is. Everyone wants respect and admiration, to feel like they matter. Some people who don't feel respected for their intelligence or wisdom resort to trying to get it through material things.
So, how do we break free from that cycle?
Housel suggests focusing on what he calls peace of mind as the most valuable return on investment.
Peace of mind. Can you elaborate on that?
It's about making spending decisions that align with your values rather than external expectations. It's about understanding that doing well with money has less to do with spreadsheets and more to do with self-awareness.
That makes a lot of sense.
And here's something really interesting. Housel points out that nothing is desired as much as the thing you want but can't quite have.
Oh, I know that feeling all too well.
Right? When something is just out of reach, you can almost afford it, but not quite. It takes on this mystique and you start dreaming about how much it'll solve all your problems.
But does it ever actually solve all our problems?
Almost never. And that's one of the book's key messages, the gap between what we think will make us happy and what actually does.
So what's the solution?
Housel suggests learning to want what's worth wanting, focusing on the things that genuinely enhance our lives rather than what we think should make us happy.
That sounds great in theory, but how do we figure out what's actually worth wanting?
One approach the book suggests is to pay attention to what brings you genuine joy versus what you think should bring you joy.
Can you give an example?
Sure, maybe you think you should want a luxury car because that's what successful people drive, but what actually makes you happy is having the freedom to take spontaneous road trips in any reliable car.
That's a really good way to think about it.
And remember, it's different for everyone. The key is being honest with yourself about what truly matters to you. I think it's that spending money well isn't about following rules or copying others. It's about understanding your own psychology and making choices that align with your personal values.
And maybe being a bit more mindful about why we want what we want.
Exactly. It's about getting the most out of what you already have, rather than constantly chasing more.
You know what? That brings us full circle to where we started. It really is more of an art than a science.
And like any art, it's about expressing who you are, not copying someone else's masterpiece.
Did you know that every time you post on social media, update your resume, or even choose what to wear, you're paying a price? Not just in dollars, but in something far more valuable. What we pay to be who we are, and why that price keeps going up. By the end of this episode, you'll understand the psychological toll of identity maintenance, the economic impact of personal branding, and how to navigate this increasingly complex landscape. Joining me is our identity expert. What's your take on this fascinating topic?
You know, it's fascinating because identity isn't just this abstract concept anymore. According to recent research from St. Clement's University, we're seeing unprecedented levels of identity crisis and confusion in modern society. It's like we're all trying to solve this complex puzzle of who we are, but the pieces keep changing shape.
That's such an interesting way to put it. Can you break down what exactly we mean by identity crisis?
Well, according to the research, an identity crisis occurs when someone deeply questions who they are and can't find a satisfactory answer. It's not just teenage angst anymore. We're seeing this across all age groups.
Wait, so this isn't just a young person's problem?
Not at all. The research shows identity crises can happen at any stage of life. It's like your internal GPS suddenly losing signal, leaving you adrift in a sea of uncertainty.
That's actually a really good metaphor. But what's driving this increase in identity confusion?
Well, the digital age has completely transformed how we form and maintain our identities. Research from GW Today shows that social media hasn't just changed where we express our identity, it's fundamentally shifted how we construct it.
Can you give us an example of that?
Sure. You know how we used to develop our identity through direct interactions with family, friends, and our local community? Now, we're constantly performing our identity for potentially unlimited audiences online.
That sounds exhausting.
It is. And here's something interesting. It reminds me of how Darth Vader merchandise consistently outsells Luke Skywalker by a ratio of 4-1. People are drawn to complex identities, even in pop culture.
That's such an unexpected connection. But it makes sense. We're drawn to complexity and identity.
Exactly. And this complexity comes with real costs. Recent studies show that maintaining multiple online personas and managing our digital identity can lead to significant psychological stress.
You know, it's like we're all becoming our own brand managers, aren't we?
That's a perfect way to put it. And this personal branding isn't just psychological work, it has real economic implications.
Can you elaborate on those economic costs?
Research from Oxford academics shows that identity maintenance in the digital age requires significant investment, both time and money. Think about professional photos, personal websites, social media management tools.
It's like we're all running small businesses, but the product is ourselves.
Exactly. And this creates what researchers call identity labor, the constant work of maintaining and adjusting our public persona.
But surely there must be some benefits to all this identity work.
Actually, yes. Research indicates that identity crises, while challenging, can be crucial catalysts for personal growth and development.
Really? How so?
Well, according to psychological studies, when we question our identity, we often emerge with a stronger, more authentic sense of self. It's like renovating a house. Sometimes you need to tear things down to build something better.
That's actually quite encouraging.
It is. But here's the catch. This process is becoming more complicated in our hyper-connected world.
How so?
Research shows that constant digital connectivity can make it harder to find quiet moments for genuine self-reflection. We're always performing, always conscious of our audience.
That's a really important point about the cost of constant connectivity.
And it gets even more interesting when we look at cultural identity in this context.
How does cultural identity fit into all this?
According to the Oxford Review, cultural identity provides a crucial sense of belonging and continuity. But in our globalized world, maintaining cultural identity requires conscious effort and sometimes comes with social costs.
What kind of social costs are we talking about?
Well, research shows people often face pressure to either assimilate or maintain cultural distinctiveness, both of which can be psychologically taxing.
It's like walking a tightrope, isn't it?
Exactly. And in the digital age, this balancing act is happening on a global stage.
That must add even more pressure.
It does. Studies show that managing multiple cultural identities online can lead to what researchers call identity fatigue.
Identity fatigue, that's such a relevant term for our times.
And it's not just individual identity, there's also the cost of collective identity maintenance.
What do you mean by collective identity?
Research from Princeton shows how groups, organizations, and even nations invest significant resources in maintaining their collective identity. Think about national branding campaigns or corporate culture initiatives.
So it's like identity costs scale up from personal to societal levels?
Exactly. And these costs aren't just financial, they're emotional, psychological, and social.
That's fascinating. But let's talk about solutions. How can we manage these costs?
Well, research suggests that developing what psychologists call identity resilience is key.
Identity resilience? Can you explain that?
It's the ability to maintain a stable sense of self while adapting to change. Think of it like having a strong core while being flexible enough to bend with the wind.
That's a beautiful metaphor.
And research shows it's becoming increasingly important in our rapidly changing world.
How can people develop this resilience?
Studies indicate that regular self-reflection, maintaining strong personal relationships, and setting healthy boundaries with digital media are crucial steps.
Those sound like valuable investments in our identity.
They are. And speaking of investments, it's important to recognize that some identity costs are worth paying.
What do you mean by that?
Well, research shows that investing in authentic self-expression and meaningful relationships tends to pay off in terms of psychological well-being.
So it's about being selective with our identity investments?
Exactly. It's like any other investment. You want to put your resources where they'll bring the most meaningful returns.
That's really helpful framing.
And it's backed by research showing that people who make conscious choices about their identity investments tend to report higher life satisfaction.
So what's your key takeaway for our listeners?
The research is clear. While identity maintenance comes with real costs, understanding and consciously managing these costs can lead to more authentic and fulfilling lives.
That's really powerful.
And remember, sometimes the highest price we pay is trying to be someone we're not.
In the quiet hours of the night, a ghost haunts your mind. Not a supernatural spectre, but something far more personal. Regret. That nagging voice whispering what if and if only. Today, we're diving deep into the science of regret, how it rewires our brains, and why it might actually be the key to making better decisions.
You know, it's fascinating how universal regret is. Research shows that about 90% of people experience severe life regrets. But here's what's really interesting. Regret isn't just sadness in disguise. What do you mean by that? How is regret different from just feeling sad about something? Well, according to recent neuroscience research, regret is actually one of the most cognitive emotions we experience. It requires 4 specific elements: memory, imagination, causality, and self-awareness.
That's quite a complex combination. Can you break that down for us?
Sure. See, sadness is what we feel when something bad happens. But regret? That's what we feel when we believe something bad happened because of our choices. It's all about agency, the sense that we had control and we failed.
So it's not just about the outcome, but about our role in it.
Exactly. And here's where it gets really interesting. Your brain doesn't just record what happened. It's actually a master storyteller that edits, reshapes, and replays events.
You know, that reminds me of this fascinating experiment with dice. Would you mind if I shared it?
Go ahead, I'd love to hear about it.
So, in this experiment, they put a red and white die under two cups. If you pick the cup with the red die, you win money. But here's the interesting part. Even when they offer more money to switch cups, 90% of people still won't do it.
That's the regret aversion at work. People would rather stick with their original choice, even if switching could bring a better reward, because they're trying to avoid potential regret.
It's almost like we're more afraid of regretting a change than we are excited about the possibility of a better outcome.
You know what's funny? This reminds me of that scene in Austin Powers where Dr. Evil demands $1 million as ransom.
Oh, yeah. How does that connect?
Well, in the movie, it was supposed to be this astronomical sum, but now it barely buys you a decent house in most cities. It shows how our sense of what we might regret changes over time.
Let's talk about what's actually happening in our brains when we experience regret. I understand there's a specific part of the brain involved.
Yes, it's called the orbitofrontal cortex, or OFC. It's located just above your eyes, and it's fascinating what it does.
What makes it so special?
The OFC doesn't just analyze what happened, it actively constructs what could have happened. It's like having a virtual reality simulator in your head, constantly running alternative scenarios.
So it's not just about remembering the past, but actually creating these alternate versions of reality?
Exactly. And this mental simulation, this habit of rerunning the past while editing our actions, that's the very engine of regret.
That's incredible. But doesn't that constant simulation of what could have been take a toll on our well-being?
Actually, research shows it can go both ways. Recent studies have found that experiencing greater life regret is associated with negative effects on well-being, like decreased life satisfaction.
That makes sense. Who wouldn't feel worse constantly thinking about what they could have done differently?
But here's where it gets interesting. Regret can also be incredibly valuable. It's not just about feeling bad, it's about learning and growing.
How so?
Well, studies show that people who engage with complex regret narratives often display higher emotional intelligence and moral reasoning abilities.
That's fascinating. So regret isn't just about torturing ourselves over past mistakes?
Not at all. Think of regret as your brain's way of taking notes for the future. It's highlighting what matters to you and what you might want to do differently next time.
You mentioned earlier that 90% of people experience severe life regrets. What are some of the most common ones?
According to research, the most common sources of regret involve education, career, romance, and parenting, in that order.
Interesting that education tops the list. Why do you think that is?
It's because education represents opportunity and potential. When people look back, they often see their educational choices as pivotal moments that shape their entire life trajectory.
That makes sense. And I imagine these regrets can feel pretty intense.
They can, but here's something important. The impact of regret on well-being often depends on protective factors and coping mechanisms.
What kind of protective factors are we talking about?
Things like how we engage with or disengage from regret, how we make social comparisons, and how we appraise and interpret our experiences.
So it's not just about what we regret, but how we handle those regrets.
Exactly. And this is where something called the regret minimization framework comes in.
That sounds intriguing. What is it?
It's a decision-making approach that shifts the focus from trying to achieve the best outcome to minimizing potential future regret.
So instead of asking, what's the best choice, we ask, which choice will I regret least?
Precisely. And research shows this can actually lead to better decisions, especially in situations with uncertainty.
That's really interesting. But doesn't focusing on potential regret make us overly cautious?
Actually, it can work the opposite way, too. Sometimes the fear of regret can push us to take action when we might otherwise stay passive.
Can you give an example?
Sure. Research shows that failure to act in romantic situations is among the most common regrets. People often regret not telling someone how they felt more than they regret taking a chance and being rejected.
That's really powerful. It suggests that sometimes the fear of future regret can actually motivate us to be braver.
Exactly. And this brings us to an important point. Regret isn't just about the past. It's also about the future.
How so?
Well, as Daniel Pink's research shows, if we know what we truly regret, we know what we truly value. Our regrets are like signposts pointing to what matters most to us.
That's a really powerful reframe of regret. Not as something to avoid, but as something to learn from.
Yes, and research suggests that people who engage thoughtfully with their regrets often show higher levels of cognitive complexity and better decision-making abilities.
So what's the key to engaging with regret in a healthy way?
The key is to treat regret as information rather than punishment. It's not about beating yourself up, it's about understanding what your regrets are telling you about your values and priorities.
That makes a lot of sense. And I imagine timing plays a role too.
Absolutely. Research shows that the impact of regret can vary significantly depending on how much time has passed and what opportunities still exist for change or growth.
So when we look back at our past decisions, we should consider the context we were in at the time.
Yes, exactly. Most of our regretted decisions were made when we were different people, with different values, needs, and levels of understanding.
That's actually quite comforting, the idea that our past regrets were made by a different version of ourselves.
And that's precisely why regret can be such a powerful tool for growth. It shows us how we've changed and what we've learned.
You know that feeling when you're so excited about something that you can barely sleep, like a kid on Christmas Eve? Well, today we're diving into why anticipation might actually be better than getting what you want. We'll explore the science behind why looking forward to something can be more rewarding than actually getting it, and how this shapes our daily decisions.
And it's fascinating because this isn't just about feeling excited. There's real neuroscience behind why anticipation can be so powerful.
I've always wondered about that. What exactly happens in our brains when we're anticipating something good?
Well, according to recent research, when we anticipate something rewarding, our brain releases dopamine. But here's the interesting part. Dopamine actually spikes higher during the anticipation phase than during the actual experience.
Wait, really? So our brains get more excited about looking forward to something than actually getting it?
Exactly. The ventral tegmental area of our brain, which is key in the reward system, becomes highly active during anticipation. It's like our brain is rehearsing the joy before it happens.
That explains so much about human behavior, like why we sometimes enjoy planning a vacation almost as much as the vacation itself.
Right, and this anticipation actually serves an evolutionary purpose. Our brains evolved to predict future events to help us survive.
Mm-hmm.
Dr. Michael Smith, a cognitive scientist, explains that this goes back way before humans. All organisms developed expectations about future events to drive their behavior.
That's incredible. So we're basically wired to enjoy the waiting game?
In many ways, yes. But it's not just passive waiting, it's active anticipation. Think about how children can't sleep on Christmas Eve.
Oh yeah, that's such a perfect example.
They're not just waiting, they're imagining, planning, getting excited. Their brains are literally buzzing with activity, creating this wonderful state of anticipation.
And businesses have really caught on to this, haven't they?
Absolutely. Marketing experts understand that anticipation can be a powerful tool. Companies often create elaborate build-ups to product launches or sales events.
Like those famous Apple product launches.
Exactly. And research shows this isn't just hype. Consumer anticipation has a strong impact on buying decisions. People try to predict how happy a product will make them feel.
But doesn't that sometimes lead to disappointment when things don't live up to our expectations?
That's a great point. This is what psychologists call prediction error, the gap between what we expect and what we actually experience.
Tell me more about that.
Well, when reality doesn't match our anticipated pleasure, dopamine levels can actually drop, leading to that feeling of disappointment.
Like when you've been looking forward to a movie for months and it turns out to be just okay?
Exactly. Research shows that our brains start gearing up before the experience begins, creating what scientists call a neural promise.
A neural promise. I love that term.
Yes, and when that promise isn't fulfilled, we feel let down. But here's what's fascinating. We keep doing it anyway.
Why is that?
Because the anticipation itself is rewarding. Studies show that anticipation activates our brain's pleasure centers, regardless of the outcome.
So we're kind of addicted to anticipation?
In a way, yes. The brain's reward system responds strongly to anticipation, similar to how it responds to other pleasurable experiences.
Interesting.
And this isn't just about short-term pleasure. Anticipation can actually help us make better decisions by helping us predict outcomes.
How so?
Research shows that when we engage in anticipation, we're actually practicing decision-making and planning for future events.
So it's like a mental rehearsal?
Exactly. It's our brain's way of preparing for different possibilities and outcomes.
But can too much anticipation be harmful?
Yes, especially when it leads to unrealistic expectations. Some researchers suggest that excessive anticipation can actually diminish our ability to enjoy the present moment.
That makes sense. If we're always looking forward to the next thing, we might miss what's happening right now.
Right. And studies show that people who are constantly anticipating future events can experience higher levels of anxiety.
So how do we find the right balance?
Research suggests it's about maintaining what psychologists call realistic optimism, enjoying the anticipation while staying grounded in reality.
Can you give an example of that?
Sure, let's say you're planning a vacation. You can enjoy dreaming about it and planning it, but also acknowledge that not everything will go perfectly.
That makes a lot of sense.
And interestingly, this balanced approach can actually lead to more satisfaction in the long run.
How does that work?
When we have realistic expectations, we're more likely to appreciate things as they are, rather than constantly comparing them to an idealized version.
That's really valuable insight.
And it's supported by research showing that people who maintain balanced expectations tend to report higher levels of life satisfaction.
So what's the takeaway for our listeners?
I'd say it's about embracing anticipation as a natural and enjoyable part of life, while staying grounded in reality.
Kind of like enjoying the journey as much as the destination?
Exactly. And understanding that sometimes the anticipation might actually be the best part, and that's okay.
This has been fascinating.
And it's something we can all apply to our daily lives, whether we're looking forward to a big event or just a cup of coffee in the morning.
Speaking of looking forward to things, what's one practical tip our listeners can use to make the most of anticipation?
Research suggests that sharing your anticipation with others can actually enhance the experience. It creates a social connection and amplifies the positive emotions.
That's really interesting.
Yes, and it's why we often enjoy planning events with friends or sharing our excitement about upcoming experiences on social media.
It all comes back to human connection, doesn't it?
Absolutely. Anticipation isn't just an individual experience, it's something that can bring people together.
That whispered conversation about bills you overheard as a child, those moments when your parents tensed up at the checkout counter, we're diving into how these early experiences literally rewired your brain about money and why they're still controlling your wallet decades later.
And what's fascinating is that these money scripts, as we call them, form way earlier than most people realize.
Money scripts? That's an interesting term. Can you break that down for us?
Sure, money scripts are these deeply ingrained beliefs about money that we develop in childhood. According to research by financial psychologists, they're typically only partially true but end up unconsciously guiding our adult financial behaviors.
So these aren't just random habits we pick up?
Not at all. In fact, neuroscience shows that between birth and age 7, our brains operate in what's called a theta brainwave state. It's basically like being in a hypnotic condition.
Wait, what? Like actual hypnosis?
Pretty much. During this period, children absorb everything about money without any critical filters. Every emotional reaction, every overheard conversation, it all gets downloaded directly into their subconscious.
That's kind of terrifying when you think about it.
It is. And here's what makes it even more impactful. Children are incredibly sensitive to their parents' stress levels, especially around money discussions.
So even if parents aren't directly talking about money, kids are still picking up on all that tension?
Exactly. Even nonverbal cues like changes in voice tone or body language during financial discussions become part of a child's developing money blueprint.
And I imagine these patterns show up pretty clearly in research?
They do. A fascinating University of Michigan study found that children as young as 5 already had distinct emotional reactions to spending and saving money.
5 years old? That seems incredibly young.
And here's what's really interesting. These weren't just theoretical reactions. When researchers gave kids $1 to spend on toys or save, their emotional responses actually predicted their behavior.
How so?
Well, they found that children who were classified as spendthrifts would often buy something even if they were only mildly interested in it. They just didn't experience enough pain of paying in the moment.
That sounds exactly like some adults I know with their credit cards.
Right? And here's something surprising. The study found that 4 times as many children were classified as tightwads than spendthrifts, which actually mirrors the pattern we see in adults.
So these patterns really do stick with us. But what are the main types of money scripts people tend to develop?
Research published in the Journal of Financial Therapy identified 4 distinct categories. The first is money avoidance, believing that money is bad or that you're somehow unworthy of it.
That sounds pretty limiting.
It is. Then there's money worship, the belief that more money will solve all your problems. Third is money status, where your self-worth is tied to your net worth.
And the fourth?
Money vigilance, being overly cautious or secretive with money. Think of someone hiding cash under their mattress.
Do these scripts show up differently across cultures?
Absolutely. Different cultures have varying attitudes towards saving, spending, and wealth accumulation. In some cultures, frugality is a prized virtue, while in others, visible consumption is the norm.
And I imagine social media is amplifying all of this for kids today.
Exactly. Social media increases the pressure of what we feel we should be doing with money and how much we should have. And children are being exposed to this at a very young age.
Let's talk about financial hardship. How does experiencing poverty in childhood affect these scripts?
Those who've experienced financial hardship often develop what's called a scarcity mindset, always fearing a return to financial insecurity.
How does that play out in adult behavior?
It can manifest in behaviors like hoarding money, avoiding risks, or being overly cautious with spending. It can even affect relationships, leading to disagreements or withdrawing from others.
That's fascinating. Can you give us an example of how these scripts play out in real life?
Sure. There was a case mentioned in Psychology Today about a woman who realized she only bought inexpensive, unattractive shoes because her mother had drilled into her that spending more than necessary was wasteful and bad.
So she was literally walking around in uncomfortable shoes because of her childhood money script?
Exactly. She had internalized this message that she wasn't deserving of nice things, even though she was financially responsible and could afford better.
Did she manage to change that pattern?
She did. She started buying fewer but nicer shoes that she felt good wearing. Interestingly, she ended up spending less overall while improving her self-esteem.
That's a great example of how understanding these scripts can lead to positive change.
And what's particularly interesting is how these scripts can be passed down through generations, almost like genetic traits.
Can you elaborate on that?
Well, for instance, if your family survived the Great Depression, messages about hoarding money and preparing for economic disaster might have trickled down to your childhood, even if you grew up during prosperous times.
That's incredible. These historical events still influencing people's financial behavior decades later.
And it's not just about the big historical events. Even small, everyday experiences can have lasting impacts.
Like what?
Think about the first time you heard, "We can't afford that," or notice some kids had brand-name sneakers while others didn't. These moments create powerful emotional associations with money.
So how do we break free from negative money scripts?
The first step is awareness, recognizing these patterns in your own behavior. Then you can start challenging these beliefs and creating new, healthier money scripts.
Any specific strategies for doing that?
Research suggests that cognitive behavioral therapy and narrative therapy can be particularly effective in helping people identify and rewrite problematic money scripts.
And I imagine education plays a role too?
Absolutely. Though it's interesting, in the United States, money tends to not be talked about much. Many people report having minimal financial education in school.
So what's the key takeaway for our listeners?
While our childhood experiences significantly influence our money mindset, they don't have to determine our financial destiny. Understanding these patterns is the first step to changing them.
That's really empowering.
And remember, awareness is the first step to change. You know that feeling when you check your calendar and every single slot is filled? When was the last time you actually had a moment to just breathe? Today, we're diving deep into time, not just as a measurement, but as the ultimate luxury of our age. We'll explore why time has become our most precious resource, how it shapes our behavior, and what it reveals about modern society. Joining me is an expert in temporal psychology and social behavior.
Thanks for having me. You know, it's fascinating that we're discussing time as a luxury because historically that wasn't always the case. Time was once measured by natural rhythms, sunrise, sunset, seasons. Now we measure it in microseconds.
That's such an interesting point. When did this shift happen? When did time become something we started treating as a scarce resource?
Well, according to research from the University of Quebec, this transformation really began in the 1700s with the emergence of new French and British societies. That's when we started seeing the modern concept of leisure time develop.
Leisure time, that almost sounds like an oxymoron today, doesn't it?
Exactly. And that's what makes this so fascinating. Recent psychological studies show that temporal scarcity, this feeling that we're running out of time, actually shapes our behavior in profound ways.
How so?
Well, according to Psychology Today, when we perceive time as limited, it can actually enhance our productivity, sharpen our focus, and even boost creativity. It's called the deadline effect.
Wait, so you're saying feeling time pressured can be good for us?
In moderation, yes. Research shows that employees who experience moderate time pressure report higher levels of task completion and job satisfaction compared to those with either low or excessive time pressure.
But there's got to be a downside to this constant time pressure, right?
Oh, absolutely. When the scarcity mindset becomes chronic, it can lead to stress, poor decision making, and what researchers call tunneling, where we become so focused on immediate time pressures that we neglect important long-term considerations.
That sounds familiar. I think we've all been there.
And here's what's really interesting. Time scarcity affects different cultures differently. Sociological studies show that some societies emphasize strict punctuality, while others take a more flexible approach.
Can you give us an example?
Well, research in the sociology of time shows that many societies historically regulated their days by communal events, prayer calls, feast days, seasonal harvests. Very different from our modern obsession with clock time.
That's fascinating. So time isn't just about the clock on the wall, it's a social construct?
Exactly. According to sociological research, time is embedded within social life. It's not just measured by objective instruments, but shaped by cultural norms and collective rhythms.
Let's talk about economics for a moment. How does time factor into economic theory?
Well, recent economic research suggests that the root question in economics isn't about consumption or production, it's about how we choose to spend our time.
That's a pretty bold statement.
It is, but think about it. Time is the one resource that's truly finite and non-renewable. Once consumed, it can't be consumed again.
Unlike money, which you can always make more of.
Precisely. And that's why time has become the ultimate luxury in our modern world. When everything else can be bought or replicated, time remains stubbornly finite.
You mentioned earlier about the historical view of leisure. How has that changed?
According to historical research, leisure was once considered a mark of social status. Having free time meant you were wealthy enough not to work constantly.
And now?
Now it's almost reversed. Being busy is often seen as a status symbol. It suggests you're important, in demand.
That's such a fascinating shift in perspective.
And it reflects a deeper change in how we value time. Studies show that people increasingly view time as a scarce commodity to be invested, saved, or spent wisely.
Almost like money.
Yes, but research indicates there's an important difference. Unlike money, time scarcity can't be compensated for with abundance in other areas.
What do you mean by that?
Recent studies show that while money abundance can sometimes compensate for time scarcity, the reverse isn't true. You can't buy more time, no matter how wealthy you are.
That's a sobering thought.
It is, and it helps explain why time has become such a precious commodity in our modern world.
Let's talk about technology. Wasn't it supposed to give us more free time?
That's one of the great paradoxes of our age. Despite all our time-saving devices, people report feeling more time-starved than ever.
Why is that?
Research suggests it's partly because technology has blurred the boundaries between work and leisure time. We're always accessible, always connected.
So, in trying to save time, we've actually made it harder to truly have free time?
Exactly. And psychological studies show this constant connectivity can trigger a persistent state of temporal scarcity, feeling like we never have enough time.
That's quite the paradox.
And it gets even more interesting when you look at how different generations handle this. Research indicates younger generations are more likely to view time as a commodity to be optimized.
Like productivity hacks and time management apps?
Precisely. But studies show this can actually increase anxiety about time scarcity rather than reduce it.
So what's the solution? How do we handle this time scarcity?
Well, research suggests that the key lies in finding what psychologists call temporal balance, using time pressure productively without letting it overwhelm us.
That sounds easier said than done.
It is, but studies show that even small changes in how we think about time can make a big difference.
Like what?
For instance, research indicates that treating time as a friend rather than an enemy, seeing it as an asset to be invested rather than a threat to be fought, can reduce stress and improve decision-making.
That's an interesting perspective shift.
And it's supported by data. Studies show people who view time this way report higher levels of life satisfaction.
So maybe the real luxury isn't having more time, but having a better relationship with it?
That's exactly what the research suggests. It's not about quantity of time, but quality of our temporal experience.
Remember, time might be our scarcest resource, but how we choose to view and use it is still up to us. You know that rush you get from buying something new? Well, science says we've been chasing the wrong high. Today, we're diving into groundbreaking research that's changing how we think about happiness, money, and what really brings us joy. You'll understand why experiences might be your ticket to lasting happiness and how to make better choices with your hard-earned cash.
And the timing couldn't be better. We're seeing a massive shift in how people spend their money, especially after the pandemic.
Really? How big are we talking?
According to MasterCard's latest report, spending on experiences has jumped by 65% from 2019 to 2023. That's huge.
Wow, that is significant. But what's driving this shift?
Well, recent research from UT Austin's McCombs School of Business found something fascinating. They studied over 3,600 people, tracking their happiness levels after different types of purchases.
And what did they discover?
People consistently reported higher happiness levels when they spent money on experiences versus material items, and this held true regardless of the cost.
Wait, so whether you're buying a $20 concert ticket or a $20,000 vacation, experiences win out?
Exactly. The lead researcher, Dr. Kumar, said it would be unfair to compare a shirt to a trip, but even when they accounted for price, experiences were still associated with more happiness.
You know what's funny? This reminds me of that scene in Austin Powers where Dr. Evil demands $1 million as ransom.
Oh yeah, that was supposed to be this astronomical sum, but now it barely buys you a decent house in most cities. It really shows how our perception of value changes over time.
Speaking of changing perceptions, I've noticed something interesting on social media lately.
What's that?
Well, even celebrities are posting more about their exotic travels than their luxury purchases. It's like experiences have become the new status symbol.
That's a great observation. And there's actually some fascinating research about why that might be happening.
Tell me more.
A recent study published in the Journal of Behavioral Decision Making found that experiences create stronger social connections than material possessions.
That makes sense. I mean, you're more likely to bond with someone over a shared concert experience than over owning the same phone, right?
Exactly. They did 7 different experiments and consistently found that people felt a stronger sense of kinship with others who had shared similar experiences.
But here's what I'm wondering. Does this apply to everyone equally?
That's actually a crucial question. Research shows there are some interesting class differences in how this plays out.
Really? How so?
Well, studies have found that higher class individuals tend to derive more happiness from experiences, while lower class individuals often find more value in material purchases.
That's interesting. Why the difference?
It comes down to practical concerns. Lower class individuals often prefer material goods because they provide lasting practical benefits and can be resold if needed.
That makes a lot of sense. It's about financial security.
Exactly. But here's where it gets really interesting. Gen Z is completely reshaping this dynamic.
How so?
According to recent data, 50% of Gen Z plans to spend even more on experiences in 2024 compared to 2023.
That's a huge shift. What's driving it?
Well, research suggests that experiences become part of our identity in a way that possessions just can't.
Can you explain that a bit more?
Think about it this way. When you buy a new phone, it remains separate from who you are. But when you learn to surf or attend a music festival, that experience becomes part of your story.
And I imagine social media plays a role in this too?
Absolutely. The experience economy is booming partly because these moments are so shareable.
But isn't there a risk of people just doing things for the gram?
That's a valid concern, but research shows the happiness benefits persist even when experiences aren't shared on social media.
Interesting. And what about the long-term effects?
That's where it gets really fascinating. Cornell University found that experiential purchases make people happier over time, while the joy from material purchases fades quickly.
Is that what they call hedonic adaptation?
Exactly. We adapt to new possessions quickly, but experiences continue to bring joy through memories and stories.
You know what's wild? The pandemic seems to have accelerated this trend.
Yes, that forced pause really made people reassess what brings them joy.
And now we're seeing this huge bounce back in experience spending.
Right, and it's not just about big trips. People are finding joy in smaller experiences too.
Like what?
Things like cooking classes, local festivals, even just trying new restaurants. The key is active participation rather than passive ownership.
That's an important distinction.
And here's something really interesting. Experiences actually help combat loneliness.
Really? How?
Recent research shows that shared experiences create stronger social bonds and a sense of community, which is crucial for mental health.
That's particularly relevant given the loneliness epidemic we're facing.
Absolutely. The research suggests we might actually be able to build social capital through what we choose to buy.
But let's be real, experiences can be expensive.
That's true, but remember, the happiness benefit isn't tied to cost. Even small experiences can bring significant joy.
Any tips for people wanting to make this shift?
Start small. Take what you already own and do something new with it. Have a picnic in the park, explore a new neighborhood, try a free community event.
That's really practical advice.
And remember, it's not about never buying things, it's about being intentional with our choices. That happiness isn't found in what we own, but in what we do and who we share it with.
That's powerful.
And the science backs it up. Experiences create lasting happiness in a way that possessions simply can't.
Well, there you have it, folks. Maybe it's time to rethink that next purchase.
Instead of buying another thing to fill your space, why not invest in something that will fill your memory bank?
You know that feeling when you're scrolling through social media and suddenly your perfectly good life feels inadequate? We're diving into a revolutionary idea that enough isn't a number in your bank account or a milestone in your career. It's actually a decision you make.
And it's such a timely topic in our culture of constant consumption and comparison.
So, what got you interested in this concept of enough as a decision?
You know, there's this fascinating story about Kurt Vonnegut and Joseph Heller at a billionaire's party. The billionaire had made more money in a single day than Heller's Catch-22 earned in its entire history.
Oh, really? What happened?
Well, Heller responded that he had something the billionaire would never have: enough. And that really captures the essence of what we're talking about today.
That's powerful. It's like he'd made this conscious choice about what enough meant to him.
Exactly. And recent research shows this isn't just philosophical, it's psychological. Studies indicate that our decision-making processes are deeply influenced by how we frame these choices about what's enough.
Can you break that down a bit?
Sure. According to recent psychological studies, decision-making isn't just about logic. It involves multiple levels of processing, including emotional and rational components.
So it's not just about crunching numbers?
Not at all. In fact, research shows that our emotions play a crucial role in helping us determine when something is enough.
You know, I've noticed something interesting about the phrase enough is enough. It's actually changed meaning over time.
Oh, how so?
Well, historically, it meant I have what I need, I'm content. But by the 1960s, it had shifted to mean I've had it, no more. It's like we lost the ability to recognize contentment.
That's fascinating, and it really reflects our current culture of excess, doesn't it?
Absolutely. Speaking of culture, how do you see this playing out in people's professional lives?
Well, recent studies show that business leaders who decide what's enough for their companies often protect qualities they value more than endless growth, things like close stakeholder relationships and personal integrity.
That's surprising. It goes against everything we're taught about business success.
Right? And here's what's really interesting. These leaders often report higher satisfaction and more sustainable success.
So deciding what's enough actually leads to better outcomes?
According to the research, yes. It's about finding what philosophers call enoughness, a state of inherent contentment that actually undermines the need for constant more.
Can you give an example of how that works?
Think about it this way. When you decide what's enough, you stop comparing yourself to others and start focusing on what truly matters to you.
That makes sense. But isn't there a risk of settling for less than you could achieve?
That's a common concern, but research shows it's actually the opposite. When you're clear about what's enough, you make better decisions because you're not constantly chasing the next thing.
Interesting. So it's more about clarity than limitation?
Exactly. Studies in decision-making psychology show that having clear boundaries actually enhances our ability to make choices that align with our values.
How does this relate to the growth mindset we hear so much about?
That's a great question. Recent research shows that a growth mindset isn't about endless expansion, it's about developing in meaningful ways.
So you can have both, growth and enough?
Absolutely. It's about growing in the right direction rather than just growing for growth's sake.
Let's talk about how people can actually apply this in their lives.
Well, research suggests starting with recognition of abundance, appreciating what you already have instead of focusing on what you don't.
That sounds simple, but I imagine it's harder in practice.
It is. Studies show our brains are wired to focus on scarcity rather than abundance. It takes conscious effort to override that.
What about in relationships? How does this concept apply there?
Research indicates that people who have a clear sense of enough often report more satisfying relationships because they're not constantly comparing or seeking more.
That makes a lot of sense.
And it extends beyond personal relationships. Studies show workplace satisfaction improves when people define what's enough in their career goals.
Can you give an example?
Sure, research found that professionals who set clear enough boundaries around work hours and commitments actually performed better than those who were always pushing for more.
That's counterintuitive to what we're usually told about success.
Right? But the data consistently shows that clarity about enough leads to better decision-making and more sustainable success.
How do you recommend people start this process?
Research suggests starting with small decisions about what's enough in daily life, like deciding how many social media accounts you really need,
That's a great practical example.
and then gradually applying it to bigger areas, career goals, relationships, material possessions.
What about the fear of missing out?
Studies show that FOMO actually decreases when people have a clear sense of what's enough for them. It's like having an internal compass.
That's really powerful.
And what's fascinating is that this concept has deep historical roots. The word enough comes from an Old English term meaning sufficient in quantity.
So this isn't just a modern reaction to excess?
Not at all. Philosophers and thinkers have been exploring this concept for centuries. It's a fundamental human question.
What surprises people most when they start applying this?
Research shows it's often the sense of relief, the liberation from constant comparison and striving.
That's interesting. So it's actually freeing rather than limiting?
Exactly. Studies indicate that having clear enough boundaries actually increases creativity and innovation.
How does that work?
When we're not constantly chasing more, our minds are free to focus on quality and meaning rather than quantity.
That's fascinating.
The research is clear. Deciding what's enough isn't about settling for less. It's about choosing what matters most.
Math show, let's go, open up your mind and grow. Facts and stories, things you never know. Every episode, we light the glow. Step into the world of Math show. Turn it up, let the rhythm flow. Feel the beat, take control. Don't be shy, just let it go. This is where the magic grows. Tune in now, it's the Math Show. Lights up bright and minds will glow. Every day we learn and grow. Come along and join the flow. New ideas begin to shine. Breaking limits, crossing lines. Every moment feels divine. In the world of Math Show time. Turn it up, let the rhythm flow. Feel the beat, take control. Don't be shy, just let it go. This is where the magic grows. Tune in now, it's the Math Show. Lights up bright and minds will glow. Every day we learn and grow. Come along and join the flow.